topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
To Triversity Talk. How is everyone this evening going? Wow, huh? We just all woke up this morning and it was a different world, wasn't it? It was. I mean, last week we were talking about how exciting Halloween was going to be. And by the way, everybody who's stopped by Triversity, our LGBTQ located on Hartford Street in Milford, Pennsylvania. We hope you had a good time. We had a lot of candy. I heard. I was not there myself because I was working on something else, but I hope you all enjoyed dropping into the center. And speaking of our center, I know that we had some open hours today. And if anybody needed someone to talk to or just to sit with other people of like-mindedness, that's why we are there for you. And check on our website, of course, for our open hours. Triversity is located in Milford, Pennsylvania. And yes, we are absolutely there for you. So in lieu of everything that's been going on in the last 24 hours, and I'll just put it that way, really got me thinking about this month. November is Transgender Awareness Month, a very important month, with November 20th being Transgender Remembrance Day. But going through all of this in my head in lieu of historically what has been going on, I'm really thrilled to welcome the guest I have here tonight. Our guest tonight is the author of the book, You Don't Suck, How to Overcome Imposter Syndrome. They run seminars, they run webinars, and they know how to deal with trauma. How perfect is that? Because quite frankly, I'm a little traumatized myself. So without further ado, please welcome our amazing guest, author Max Masure.
Hi everyone.
Max, thank you. I'm so happy to have you on tonight. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
You actually did. A lot of people do not. So yeah, Masure is the French way to do it. So
it is French. I was doing my best. French is easier for me than Spanish. What I do to the Spanish language and not getting the role. And I have a friend who's Spanish who tried to work with me on that. I tried to tell them there's something anatomically not right. In the back of my throat, I'm sure of it, because I can never get that role. But you and I met at the Generations Project. How long ago?
That probably 7 years ago. We probably met 7 years ago. Yeah.
You impressed me so much then. So did the Generations Project. For those of you who don't know what the Generations Project is, they are located out of New York, but they do workshops actually everywhere. And the workshops are writing workshops. And then at the end of it, it's 6 weeks. At the end of it, you get up and present whatever the topic is given. And it really deals with absolutely everything that people feel and experience in the LGBTQ community. So it's really special. You can find them online. That's the Generations Project. So that's where I met Max and so many other great people. And I'm glad that you and I were able to reconnect here. Since I met you there, you've written a book.
Yeah, and actually the Generation Project was definitely like the seed of it, because working with them, like they do workshops on storytelling and how trans people, queer people can own their own story and write their story, say their story. And so definitely the workshops I did with them 7 years ago are definitely the reason why I'm writing now and how I published my first book 2 years ago. Definitely.
That's really so incredible, because when you think of all the people that have gone through their program, which I may add is free, they work by sponsors and donations only. What a gift they give to people. And I one of the workshops I ended up mentoring was for transgender people. It came after you, but of course the stories were freaking incredible. And one of those people now reconnected with Pearl Love, who
Yeah,
is
Pearl.
a member of the Imperial Court of New York. I love when we all crisscross and cross pollinate and stay in touch, because, as you know, community is everything. And I think now more than ever, community has got to find the power base, and we have all got to stick together. So, what was the thinking behind this book, Imposter Syndrome? Can you just share with our audience what imposter syndrome is?
Yes. So for me, imposter syndrome is like feeling that you are not doing enough. You're not doing the what people are expecting from you, and it's very tricky. I think everyone has some type of imposter syndrome in their life, but I do believe that queer people, trans people, we have a second layer of that. People who are like discriminated have an either harder obstacle with imposter syndrome because the whole society, the white supremacy society, is really like putting us under what we should be, and it's hard to get out of this. It's hard to like be your strong self.
Well, you're talking about the label.
Yeah.
And even within that LGBTQ spectrum, people label each other, which is really mind blowing, and to how people fit. I'm just curious, because I know you're from France. Can you just draw a difference from French imposter syndrome as opposed to imposter syndrome in the United States from your perspective?
Yeah. So when I was still living in France, I moved here 13 years ago. And when I was living in France, I was not out as a trans person yet. So I was still living as a woman. And the French culture is very misogynist and very like I never felt like I was good enough, and I felt very, even on the streets of Paris, being a woman is not safe. Like you always have comments and it's catcalling everywhere. So I was really put down a lot. And when you understand now that I'm a trans masculine person, that was a layer on top of that of like I was not me, and I was not me at all. And so I think there's like difficulty already as a woman to be as good as you could be. There's a lot of barriers for that in France, which when I visited New York the first time, I really felt in my bones that I could be whoever I wanted to be. And that proved to be true because a few years after I moved here, I discovered finally that I was trans, and I found this amazing, vivid, queer community here. And I don't think I would have come out in France if there was not that community, right?
Well, you had the support here. It's interesting because I'm asking you because I don't know anything. I mean, of course, I have LGBTQ friends from France, but I never had anyone tell me, as you did right now, how misogynistic the males are in France. Italy, I would totally expect it in.
It's very similar. It's very similar.
Yeah.
Right.
Go on.
I lived as a woman in New York before I came out as trans masculine, and the catcalling I received in New York was very tamed compared to what I had in Paris. So there's definitely like a way of being as like living as a woman in France, in Paris, is very different than what I experienced here in New York. Being trans here, I think this is where I was meant to be.
Yeah, of course. And I hear that from everybody. And, now more than ever, I feel very blessed to be here and very empowered to be here because of exactly what you said. You came here, you felt things were very, very accepting. Now, I'm just going to put a spin on it. I wonder if I had a transgender person from Paris, male to female, right, would be on here talking about how they're catcalled and treated and not comfortable there, more comfortable here. Boy, it's a cultural thing.
It's like this is why the spectrum of LGBTQ is so wide. And being like me, I'm white. I'm a trans masculine person, and I'm white. I definitely saw the shift of moving from a white woman to a white man. How people perceive me as I gain more privilege, and I use it for good, and I
On
mix
that,
with
right?
other people. But as a trans woman of color, a black trans woman, there's definitely less and less. Uh,
Absolutely.
like yeah, it is. I don't feel I feel safe because I'm masculine presenting. Let's be real. Like it's definitely make a difference. And I live both, right? I lived as a woman for 35 years. Yeah.
Right, which would, of course, make you sensitive to the issues women go
Yeah.
through. I mean, and of course, being in the queer community, we're already all sensitive to a lot of those issues. But when you transitioned, in terms of how people related to you, what were some of the first things that you noticed?
Oh yeah, I remember first few months of dressing more masculine and barely starting testosterone, but physically I was looking more masculine than ever. And I remember for like all my life, I used to walk close to other people in the street at night to feel safe as a woman, right? So I was still doing that, and at some point, this woman turned around and saw me behind her, and she grabbed her bag and started to walk faster and cross the street. And I was like, oh, I'm the creepy guy. I'm like, I was so too close to her. And then this is where I like started to shift. Oh, wait a second. The world, people see me differently. I have to adapt. And I have to like put distance between people, not, like feeling how my presence had a different impact on other people.
Well, thank you, first of all, for I had that exact experience 2 weeks ago. A male, extremely well dressed, looked like a Wall Street person. Right on my heels, I stopped short. He banged into me. I fell on the floor,
Oh,
and he
wow.
right. And instead of saying, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" Okay, this was not a low life. This was like a normal person. He looked at me, and I said to him, "You knocked me down. Why were you walking so close to me?" I bet I felt the same way that woman did. And he looked at me and he said, "Fuck you." That's what
Oh
he
my
said.
God.
Right. You're saying, "Oh my God." And I'm saying, brace yourself. It's not going to affect you, but women, this is definitely coming down the pike for us right now, because that is definitely out there. It is interesting that that woman reacted to you that way because she saw a male hot on her heels and didn't know what to expect. And that realization for you at that moment, you're now perceived totally different. That's how
Yeah.
that's really like an eye opener, right?
Yeah, it is very interesting. And this is where I started to think about my own masculinity, right? I didn't want to replicate toxic masculinity that I grew up with.
Yeah, that's what. Yes,
You
yes.
know, and this is where I like really start thinking, okay, yes, I'm feeling more like myself in a masculine presentation. I'm non-binary, so I use they them pronouns, and I
Yes.
sometimes I have more feminine clothes. Like I play with my gender now, but at the time, especially at the beginning of my transition, I really needed to make a big cut and really be more masculine to really prove to myself that I was Max, that was me. um and this is where like these type of interactions made me rethink of like, wait, I have to be careful of what I project.
Yeah.
And I saw that in so also in my work situations, like I was saying the same things as before when I was working with people, but the fact that it was coming out of my mouth who was masculine presenting had more weight. And I've really felt the shift. Like it was easier to get contract clients. It was easier to make a point. And I remember at the time someone was sharing a story. They had one email, and then sometimes they signed with a masculine name and sometimes with a feminine name. And when it was the masculine, they had better answers and quicker. Clients were signing the contract. So all of that was coming to me as like, oh wait, I do feel better like I am now, and I have an impact on other people and how people interact around me, especially like women, people of color. Like I have to be mindful of that, and I put a lot of effort. Yeah,
We talk about mindfulness. Like obviously, you're a very self-aware person, but the word mindfulness really needs, people don't think of it enough, and they never think of how the person across from them is going to react. And I'm not getting into politics. I will just say this election, I was on social media today, and the horror and fear and depression that was on there was incredible. And I want to take people from the other side and just say to them, you did whatever it is that you did, but can't you see what the results of it are? Do you not have empathy? Is there not mindfulness here? And I don't know, Max, as a society, how we are going to move forward. I do think our community right now will, and by 2 weeks from now, we will have a different conversation about people's awareness, mobilization, and even within LGBTQ, how we all need to react to each other. Because as a trans man, there is polarization against the trans community within the LGBTQ community, and it makes me crazy. I will never understand that for anything. And for me personally, I go around trying to explain things to people, and then I'm like, look at me and how I present. They're kind of listening to me, and I'm doing the best I can. And I've had to learn to get control over my anger, because I want to say, what are you, stupid? And that's not cool either. That's my bad, right? And people who know me know that. But it's just, the whole thing is, we all need to be more mindful, be more aware. And I have to give you credit as a person for calling that out. I mean, that's a kind of sensitivity not everybody has.
Yeah, I think for me, people who don't, like you said, they don't have empathy. I think it's one level, but the second level is like everything that this government's gonna do for the next 4 years is gonna impact everyone.
Absolutely.
Even people who voted for that person. Everyone, I don't know, like, it's for me very naive to think, oh, I'm going to vote for this person because he's the strongest. I'm scared of him, so I better be on his side or whatever. But all the laws that are against trans people have impact on everyone else. It's like removing rights, removing healthcare for other people. It's the first step. And I don't think a lot of people realize that there is like a danger, even if you're not part of the LGBTQ community, even if you're not a person of color, like there's like the rights are going to be removed even more than when it was 2020.
But I don't think people think of that. I've come to believe at the end of the day, it boiled down to groceries, gas, and the whole these gazillion people that they perceive coming over the border taking their jobs. I don't think it ever goes beyond that. And you know what? You use the word naive. That's my naive and all of our naive on this end, because actually I never thought she was a shoo-in. I never thought that. I never thought Hillary was a shoo-in either, because in my life, I take in media all the time. That's my job as an interviewer. And I spent a lot of time on the other media and saw what people wrote. They were pissed off about quote unquote inflation. So they weren't thinking, Max, of any repercussions with the health care. They're certainly not thinking of trans people, not thinking of anything other than, God damn, my groceries are costing me more money and I pay $3.59 at the pump. And when you have a global brain, when you think globally as we do, it's a whole different story. But I've had to come to understand, because people say to me, how could they? I do understand how they could. It's not anything I would embrace or support. Yeah. But I do understand now how that could happen. And I made it a point to make myself understand that.
Yeah, and for me, coming from France, in France, you vote for the president. One person is one vote. And the way things are done in the US, it took me a while to understand that, no, one vote is not one person, one vote, with the way the states and like the election process and like all of that also, I think for me, is part of what I think should be dismantled, honestly, of like the way elections works. Like, for example, it's like it's designed for people in power to stay in power. And I think that's totally the opposite of the work I do, and I want power for people.
Right.
And I think it's hard. It's hard to like make movement in that like national way. And I keep telling my friends who are calling me and are all stressed about what happened, and I tell them we need to focus on local. We have power in local. We have power in like supporting people around us. And that's where I want to put my energy. Today I was like heavy and numb, but I know it's like grief. And then yeah, when I'm gonna go back and like be an activist again and do things for trans people, I want to be active in the local because people are here, and this is where we can have an impact.
Max, I am in total and complete agreement with you on that. And that's where our power lays. I put something up on social media today to try and make people feel better. And again, we as people are powerful. You know, I do a ton of fundraising as an entertainer, a ton of it. And that makes me feel powerful because the money I raise through organizations, you know, goes, we just did one with the Imperial Court of New York, Latin Explosion. That money went to the kids at Sylvia's Place.
Yeah.
How incredible. The Trevor Project. How incredible to be able to do that. And I got up this morning. I'm an empathetic person and I know things sometimes ahead of time. I actually knew last night. I had dinner out with friends and the numbers weren't looking bad. And yet when I saw like the differentiation with the electoral college to the regular states, and I don't understand the electoral college, Max. I got to tell you, I still, maybe somebody can break that down and explain that to me. And if I don't understand it, I can tell you 3/4 of Americans don't understand it. So we're getting back to your point of like, you know, one person, one vote. But when I saw that happening last night, I'm like, oh, I see how this is going. And I came home, I made sure I got a good night's sleep. And when I woke up this morning, I didn't need to turn anything on because I just knew the air felt different to me. I took my first breath of awareness and things were just different. And again, we can all do something. All right. Your book that you wrote, how can you run workshops about what you wrote to help people?
Yeah, so I do workshops around imposter syndrome, trying to get people to understand where the imposter syndrome comes from in their own self. And I talk a lot about society is like gaslighting us, and we are good at what you're doing. Everyone is good at what they're doing. And we live in society, in companies, in situations where we've been told that we are not good enough. And we've been taught that so many times, especially for me, like as a trans person, I never really touched who I was until I was 36. That's the thing of like, the more you tell someone that it's not true what they're thinking, the more we believe it. And then, no, I'm not good enough because X, Y, and Z during my life proved that I was not good enough. I didn't have the power.
So, yeah, so I want to go into this with you. So, Simone Krauss, who's been on this show, who's an incredible transgender activist, she and I have had these discussions about how people are assigned at birth and what the brain is. Okay. And we are learning more and more, and there needs to be much more information about this, how the brain is, because we have young children that completely identify not as what they were given as their sex at birth, but as, you know, they could have been said male at birth, completely feminine brains, all the attributes. That's going on in someone's head. Was that happening for you?
Yeah, I think there's some truth here that I don't know about the brain on its own, but I know as soon as you assign female at birth, the society, your parents, the community at large, the school, everything is giving you something that is different than if you were assigned male at birth. So from the moment you first cry, you already are in a path of like, I would say manipulation. It's like manipulation of like what you can or can't do.
Well, it's a standard.
Yeah.
You're already held to a standard
Yeah.
that may not have anything to do with who you are. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, completely. And I think I talk about that. I'm writing a new book now. It's a memoir, and I'm talking more about that. My previous book, I already talked a bit more about my life, but it's a workbook. So that means there's like activities and work, like prompts to uncover your own imposter syndrome. And I had some pieces of writing about my life, right? My connection with imposter syndrome. And after readers read my book, they were like, "Hey, you need to write your memoir. Like, we want more from
Oh
that."
my God, totally. Me too. You know,
Yeah,
from the time I met you, because you were also a parent,
yeah.
and
I'm still a parent. Yep.
your child is like a teenager now. Am I correct?
She's 10. She's 10. So yeah,
Okay,
she's
she's
almost a teenager.
not
She's
terrible
almost.
yet.
She still loves me. So
She loves you. So just be prepared, because nothing to do with you. She's going to hate you because, again, that's the standard that happens. You know, my daughter is now 31, but yeah, and we go through that like really bad period. But also, I would think like being a parent, and the questions kids ask. How do you deal with that? And do you deal with that in your imposter syndrome book? Because that's becoming a reality for a number of people that I've come in contact with. They've got kids, you know.
yeah.
How
So
do you talk to kids?
for me, the way that when I came out as trans when my kid was 2 years old, and I know for sure that I'm a better parent now because I'm my true self. I'm
Because you're you,
grounded. I'm
right?
aligned. And I was a mom for 2 years, right? I gave birth to my child. I was a mom for her for 2 years, and then I transitioned as being a dad. And I know I'm a way better parent now because I'm solid. You know, I'm like I know
You're
who I am.
you're
Yeah.
Matt, right?
And I was not the case before. Before that, I was another line. I was very confused. I was never sure. I had self-esteem issues and lack of confidence, and that when you're parenting has a big impact on how the child is going to grow because they need someone who is actually like
A role
sure of
model.
who they are. And
A role
if you're around kids, they feel it. They know when you're not your true self. Like they like that some people are, oh yeah, you're so good with kids. It's because those people are like they are themselves with the kids, and the kids can totally see that. It's like, why are you not yourself? Or like, I totally like, and I am like that. Kids loves me because I just me, and I play with them, and I don't know. That's my everyday life. It's me
Kids
being
can see the
playful.
truth. The kids can
Yeah,
really see the truth, and
yeah.
they can smell an imposter a mile away. So they can also smell the truth, and you engage with them, and they know that,
Yeah,
and
yeah, and
they
so
connect.
for me, like tackling my imposter syndrome, and I still, moments when I'm like I'm not completely sure what I'm doing, but tackling the imposter syndrome for me was really critical for being a good parent. Yeah,
Right, right. You know what? And you were single parent. Am I correct?
yeah. My kid has another parent, so I have her once every other week. So I have my week alone with her, and then she goes to the other home. Yeah.
Okay, but that's good, because then there's hopefully two strong parent. It's really hard when you're doing this alone, as you know. I'm sure people have spoken to you about that.
Yeah, yeah, she has a good balance, and I'm
Yes,
grateful
she
for that.
has a good balance. And at 10 years old, she gets who you are. Am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a very, very good relationship. Uh,
Fabulous.
yeah.
Fabulous. So I wanted to talk to you about you've done work with the NIH, National Institute of Health, involving trauma.
Yeah, so I do. So I'm an author. I write books, and on the other side, I'm also a service designer, user experience designer, and I work now. I work for the National Institutes of Health, and I work for specifically underrepresented communities, and have
Marginalized
well,
communities.
yeah, and then that's where the trauma informed design that I do is really useful because I can really advocate for those communities to the people at the NIH who are not really aware of who are actually using the services, the healthcare, and everything.
No, but
So
this
I
is
work.
so amazing to me that this is what you do,
Yeah,
and you're here tonight because this is all about to become under fire. My
yeah.
God, Max, you're going to be so busy. You have to carve out time to write that memoir because, all of this, you're right. People don't realize that all of this is going to be affected.
Yeah, and for me, the project I'm working on now is all about gathering data from communities that are usually not visible for healthcare, for research, and this is critical because the data is used to make medicine, to make medical recommendations, are based in data mostly made of white cisgender men, and there's so many different aspects in our DNA. If you're like a black person, if you're a queer person, if you're like uh, coming from Hispanic heritage, like, and that's the work I'm doing now, is like bringing all those data. So when we make decisions for medicine, we actually take into account each of every identity. Yeah.
But when people transition, right? And I've done a lot of shows on it. I had the team on from Mount Sinai. I
Mm-hmm.
had an incredible nurse from the center down in Texas who came on. She was wonderful. But in terms of where we're at right now with medicines, with hormone, let's talk about the hormones
Mm-hmm.
before we even get into surgeries. Is it like one thing for one person, or there's options out there?
There's a lot of options. I can only talk about my own experience as a trans masculine person taking
Yes,
testosterone.
please share that with us because there's people that are listening. And transmasculine, by the way, is an area that a lot of people just don't know about.
Yeah, and that's why it took me so many years to actually realize that I was trans, because I didn't see any
You
representation of
no
trans
one to
masculinity.
identify with, right?
Yeah, I couldn't be myself. I couldn't be something that I never saw. So yeah, for testosterone, there's different ways, and it's you always have to have a blood work done to see where are your levels of testosterone, and then it's like regularly taken to make sure you have the right amount, and it could be very little. It could be also there's injections that you could do once every week or once every 2 weeks. You could have also a gel that you put on your skin every day, which
Right,
is usually a good as a starting point because you can stop more easily and you can see changes coming slowly.
right.
I also heard there's another way when you have a pellet, a little pill that is inserted inside under your skin, so you don't have to do your shots. Like I think it's for 3 months, something like that. So you don't have to take care of that anymore.
Makes it easier
Yeah, so that it's like it keeps like getting more and
evolving.
more evolving, and yeah, and I can't talk about trans feminine and trans women experience, but there are also other a bunch of options for them too.
Right. Well, do you get to talk about this out in the public and give workshops on this?
Yeah, I actually do trans inclusion workshops, and I did that for a lot of healthcare companies and startups and schools. And I come with like a very open-minded, and I want everyone when I do the workshop to be open-minded, and I really go very, very like I use very terms that are very understandable, and I really take people.
Digestible for
Yeah,
people.
and I have exercises where I build empathy, so people who are not aware of trans lives can actually like get connected and understand more how it feels when you're not in your gender, how it feels when you finally get euphoria for being in your gender.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have heard this story I do a lot of my programs are on transgender. They're all different. I try and give as much information as possible. Transmasculine, not as much, just because there's not a lot of people that come on the show. However, more and more people are now transmasculine, and somebody like you being able to get somebody early on in their transition and talk about it is really a great
Oh
help.
yes.
I
Yeah.
am hoping there's organizations listening tonight like Triversity, but they're listening because we're nationwide on this show, that think about reaching out and having someone like you come and give a talk, because it's very much needed. In the corporate world, of course, they'll hire you because the corporate world is going that way. We have so much now with inclusion and trying to raise awareness, which is all good. But the grassroots little places, like we're out of Milford, Pennsylvania, but we
Mhm.
serve a lot of people in the tri-state area. And I don't have to tell you, there's a gazillion organizations in the United States of America that could really take a you and have valuable information that someone like you knows, because as you know, there's a lot of misinformation.
Yeah, and I also trained like healthcare services and hospitals where like you need to ask for someone's name and the name they want to use. You need to ask for
Absolutely.
their pronouns. You need to have two
Yeah.
separate like sex assigned at birth and sex they are living now or gender. Like having those like those data captured when someone is like checking in, but also
Right.
use that data because I've been into places when they ask for the name you want to use, but they actually never use it.
Right.
So it's like there's like finding
No,
where
I
to
love that
actually
you
do
read
it. Yeah.
the data. I was reading all tech stuff, and I'm like, oh boy, this is so far over my head. But you have broken it down, and are you being able to be there and do that? Because you're right, the people you're working with are not going to know this, and you're bringing a big gift to the party, by the way, by
Mhm.
what you can add in terms of educating people. Now, you've worked with the Healing Schools Project. Would you tell us
Mhm.
what that's about?
Yeah, so a few years ago, I joined a fellowship where we were doing. So it's like people who want to build a new project, and each year. So it's from the Robin Hood Labs, Blue Ridge Labs from Robin Hood, and every year there's like a theme, and
Okay.
there's like applications, and they keep like maybe 15 people, and the goal is always like a theme. Like for New York. So it's very New York based. And it's like for people who are from underrepresented communities in New York. And each year there's a theme. And I created the Healing School Project during that fellowship with two other amazing people. And Wenimo Okaya is also, or is still working on that now. She's like thriving. She's doing that full time, and she's like raised millions of dollars. And she brings trauma informed care for teachers in schools. So she like create like circle of talk and like bringing meditation, bringing other ways for teacher of color, especially black teachers,
Yes.
to have the support like the mental health, the well-being care to continue to do the work. It's been wonderful, and I still talk to her regularly. Yeah.
It's such incredible support. And you said it's affiliated with the Robin Hood Foundation?
Yeah. It's like
Very cool. Who came up with the concept of this project?
we did like the way it works. We were paired with people, and then we came up with that project. So Wenimo was already working on that on her side, and she brought that as an idea. And
Wow.
with another person, Elle, we worked to build that, the three of us, and then expanded. And now it has a lot of funding, and it's beautiful.
Well, I know, and that's amazing when you can take something from a concept, right, and to come on here and say, and now it has a lot of funding.
Yeah.
That's a great success, and a lot of people will be helped from that. You
Yeah.
were also involved with the What If Summit.
Yes. I do a lot of conference. I do a lot of talks, and I do different topics. Either like I do a lot of trauma informed design and how to do user research and design with that lens of trauma informed. I do talks around imposter syndrome, and for the ETH Summit, I was doing a talk about imposter syndrome, and I led an activity during the conference where people were answering prompts about uh, the best project they had during the year and the worst project they had during the year, and we were working on to that, turning that into what you should do next, and that picking the best parts of the good projects, removing the worst parts of the worst project, and like making a timeline, making like a grid of like, hey, I need for my next projects opportunities, I need a team that is going to be diverse. I need the leadership team to not only be white people. I need to be heard when I work. Like, and you make a list of what you need, and every time I do that workshop, and I also do coaching, so I do that one on one as well. And this one person was like, I have an interview on Monday, but I don't feel secure at all. I feel like I'm not going to be good. And I did that one session with her, and she had this. Okay, I know my worth now. I know what I should say and not say or whatever. And she got the job. She got the job the next week.
I mean, a success story, right?
Yeah.
How cool is that? Right. But you were the one that helped her find her confidence.
Yes. I don't create anything really. It's
No,
just like
but you
helping people
find
to
it
like, yeah,
interesting.
find your own strength, and I have the tools for that. Yeah.
I'm curious from your experience, just dealing with transgender people, do you think that there's more self doubt because the person was starting out in the world one way and then is living now a totally different life, living their truth, living who they are? But is there still going to be an underlying doubt?
Yes, I can't talk for every trans people, but I can talk about my own experience, right? And I think for me that was totally the case. Like I never felt, I didn't know I was feeling that bad until I came out, and I finally found alignment, and like, oh, that's why I was always anxious. That's why I was waking up every night not remembering how to breathe. Like I had anxiety attacks,
Horrible.
and that's a big shift when you finally your true self. But this is not the happy ending. It doesn't end here. Like with the government that we have and what happens in the world, we are constantly like diminished. Like the law that I passed, all the anti-trans law that passed in the past years, and the one that's gonna come with what
And
happened
all of those
yesterday.
bills that are on the table right now.
Yeah, so it's like the society keeps telling us that we're not good enough,
Not
that we
good
should not
enough.
exist, and that takes a toll. That takes a toll, and it takes trends to like continue to be your true self, even though there's like big voices that are telling you, no, you're not who you think you are. And I'm strong. I'm 43 years old, and I manage a lot of challenges in my life, but I keep thinking of the kids, right?
I
the
agree.
young the younger kids who already know who they are. Like my kid is at school, and there's a bunch of trans kids at the school, and they're like 3, 4, 5 years old. And yes, at that age, and if you have the support from parents, from a school, to actually explore what you feel in that moment, that's beauty, and that's freedom. But if you raised with parents or a school or society that completely avoid this and gaslight you into, no, 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 you're not like this, you're like that, then the kid's gonna grow into a version of themselves that is not their true self, which the way I was
Of course.
as a kid and as an adult. Yeah.
So the rose colored glasses that I wear make me want to believe, because I know those kids, those children, and I want to believe, and the ones I know have amazing parents. I want to believe that there's going to be more and more and more of those parents, right? Because I'm meeting more and more and more of those children. And people have said to me, oh, do you think it's because people are more comfortable with that now? I personally don't think that. I just think there are more and more trans children now. And I think that this is something we need to take the gloves off about. And every single school needs to be schooled in education in this area. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
No
And
child should feel bad about themselves in school. That they shouldn't be freaked out about using the bathroom they want to use. And how do you deal with play dates and sleepovers? And we're talking about child to child. How much information you give another there's so many holes in this area, Max. Maybe it'll be somebody like yourself that'll come along and come up with a program as to how to address this, because we've got to.
yeah, I'm actually I created the LGBTQ committee at my kids' school because, like a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I was like, oh, there's nothing in that school. There's nothing
There's
for
nothing.
queer people. There's nothing for trans kids, and I was really like upset. And at some point, I was like, wait, I should do it. That's
Well, you can do it. You're the one that can do it. Not
yeah.
to put
So
everything on you, but you are the one that can do it.
yeah, so I started that a couple of years ago, and now we're like second year, and we have program where like we have a budget that is from the PTA, and I bring speakers. We have workshops. We celebrate Coming Out Day. We celebrate that in
Thank you.
October earlier, and then we're gonna celebrate Trans Day of Visibility and Pride, and I'm gonna bring the Drag Queen Story Hour and
Absolutely.
some trans workshops and stuff like that. So I'm doing it, and I think it's more people could do instead of like saying like, oh, my school is not inclusive. I think that I pushed a lot of doors, and like now I have the support of the administration of the school, and I think I can't just stay silent and not do anything. That's
Of
the way
course,
I
it
am.
makes you an activist. But while we're having this conversation, I'm thinking like in New York City schools. I'm bringing up New York City because Triversity is in a rural area. It
Yeah,
is much, much, much harder to do the kinds of things we're talking about
yeah.
there. But in New York City, I would like to see the schools start a program where they have a U and a bunch of U's that are sent around to the schools to have these talks. And
Yeah, there is actually, Wendy. There's the LGBTQ network.
great,
Is based out of Queens, but they go everywhere, and that's one of the workshop I'm gonna bring
you.
in February is coming from them. They also provide a lot of like materials for coming out day, for example. They like you just for free. You can sign up, and they send you posters and little goodies and flags and stuff that you can give out. So
Very cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
that is the one I really rely on. P Flag is another one.
What
Uh,
people like, yeah.
yeah, and the Ackerman Institute, the Family Ackerman Institute. Also, like there's stuff happening, and I've been doing my own workshops, and I also like to call them out when there's a need. Yeah.
So, Max, when you were young, all right, and having whatever feelings you were having, and then you transition at 36 on that journey, right? How did your family react to you early on? I'm talking about when you were a child, if you discuss these feelings, and then when you came to your actual transition. A number of people that have come on this show, late transitioners, right? What
Yeah.
I call a group over 50, have lost jobs, friends,
Mhm.
family.
Yeah.
What was it like for you, if you can just
Yeah.
tell
So
me that?
to answer first, when I was a kid. So when I was a kid, I was definitely more like a tomboy, but the French culture and the pressure my mom might have been at the time was like, no, 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 you need to wear a dress, you need to do this. So I went that road because that's what my mom was believing in, and I didn't have the words. Honestly, I did not have the words of like expressing what I was feeling inside. I just wanted to be to don't have a t-shirt and run and play soccer. That's what I want. I
No,
wanted to be a kid.
right. If Simone were here, she would probably say the masculine part of your brain, because these are the discussions, and scientists the masculine part of your brain was the overriding part of your brain, and that's why all those things were there. And yet here you were pushed down and said, no, you can't do that. You have to wear a dress and quote unquote be a girl.
Yeah, so I that's how I grew up. That's that, and then I followed, and puberty hits, and oh yeah, obviously I'm a girl. I should be a girl. And then I never questioned again until I was way later and depressed and really like I was at the end of the rope when I really came out. It was not like a fun day. It was really just like what is my exit strategy? And this is where like I finally accepted that okay, well, maybe I'm not who I'm supposed to be. And when I came out at 36, I did lose some friends who didn't understand what was happening. My marriage didn't last. My parents have a very good relationship with them now. We talked a lot over the years, but it was hard for them, especially from the French culture. French culture is very binary. It's very
Right.
either a man or a woman, and for me, switching, I was not going all the way to man. I was like non-binary, and I'm exploring my gender.
Exactly.
Uh,
You were
but it was
exploring.
hard, and I have a lot of compassion and empathy for my parents. My mom had to really break down a lot of preconception that she had about gender, about her own. I'm a mother who
Well,
gave
in her
birth to a daughter.
right.
So she was telling me like, yeah, I gave birth to a daughter, but now you're not a woman anymore, and that's like it was a lot of, for her to grow into. But now, after a few years now, we like they're very supportive, they're very
I am. I
understanding, they're
love
happy
your
to.
I love happy endings, right? And I love your happy ending. I can't believe it. We are down to the wire. What get left. I don't know where the time went. Of course, I had a million more things I wanted to talk to you about. I know you're writing the memoir. What do you hope to accomplish in the next couple of years as an activist?
Yeah. So writing my memoir is also part of my activism because I'm talking about trauma and how trauma might be a reason why I didn't come out earlier. So my memoir is all about that question, like, did trauma CPTSD, I have CPTSD, did trauma CPTSD blocked me from being my true self earlier in life? That's really the theme of my memoir, and I think it's going to be the goal is to have a universal message and that can help other people thinking about their own self. Doesn't have to be trans, but just like who you really are inside.
Right. Who am I really? Well, Max, thank you. You're an amazing person. I always take one of these hokey pictures online when I'm finished. So just bear with me. I love doing these. Just say cheese.
Cheese. Fromage.
Fromage. I am so glad we reconnected. I'm so glad we reconnected here. I would love to have the LGBTQ organization that is going into the schools. I'd love to have them on the show. So,
Okay.
They would be great. You know, as I tell people, we advocate, we educate, and we entertain. And I believe that that is the way to reach people. Thank you for everything. And happy Turkey Day ahead of time. Well, you're here. You celebrate Turkey Day.
Yes.
And just a pleasure having you here. Thank you for everything you're doing and how you're contributing to our community. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.